My name is Ethan Carter, and 3 years ago I experienced something I still can't explain. It happened on a cold autumn night in Chicago. I had stayed late at work and missed every ride home except the last train. The streets were almost deserted. A few streetlights flickered above me as I hurried toward the train station. Something about the night felt strange, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I finally reached Blackwood Station. The place was nearly empty. An old security guard sat on a bench near the entrance, staring at me as if he had been expecting me. I asked the guard if the last train had already left. He slowly looked up at me and said, "It will arrive soon, but if anything feels wrong, get off at the next station." A few moments later, I heard a train approaching in the distance. I looked down the tracks and saw something unusual. Only one train car had its lights on. Every other car was completely dark. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the train. The station was completely silent. No announcements, no passengers, just the sound of the train's engine humming in the darkness. Taking a deep breath, I stepped toward the illuminated car. The moment I stepped inside, a strange chill ran through my body. The car was warmer than outside, yet I felt freezing cold. I looked around and realized there were only 4 passengers inside. There was a teenage boy near the window, a middle-aged woman reading a book, a tall man in a long black coat with his head lowered, and a little girl quietly staring outside. The doors closed behind me and the train began moving. I sat near the center of the carriage. Nobody spoke. Nobody even looked at one another. The silence felt unnatural. After several minutes of silence, I forced a smile and said, "Looks like everyone had a long day." My voice echoed through the carriage. No one answered, not even a glance. Just when I thought everyone was ignoring me, the little girl slowly turned her head toward me. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her pale face looked calm, but her eyes seemed strangely sad. The girl looked directly at me and asked, "Is this your first time on this train?" Her voice was soft and almost a whisper. I nodded and told her that it was. The girl lowered her eyes and softly said, "Then you should get off at the next station." The words instantly reminded me of the old security guard outside. My heart skipped a beat. I tried to laugh and asked her why. The girl slowly looked out the window again and replied, "Because after that station, this train goes somewhere else." Before I could ask another question, every light inside the carriage suddenly went out. The train was swallowed by complete darkness. For a few terrifying seconds, I couldn't see anything at all. A few seconds later, the lights flickered back on. I blinked and looked around the carriage. Something was wrong. The tall man in the black coat was no longer sitting in his seat. My breathing became heavy. I was certain the man had been sitting near the back of the carriage. Now his seat was completely empty. None of the other passengers seemed surprised. I slowly turned my head toward the front of the carriage. My heart nearly stopped. The man in the black coat was now sitting directly across from me, his head still lowered. I never saw him move. I never heard footsteps. One moment he was at the back of the train, and the next moment he was sitting right in front of me. A cold feeling spread through my body. Then the train began slowing down. Through the window, I could see a lonely platform appearing in the darkness. The little girl quietly looked at me and said, "This is your last chance. Get off the train." I stared at the empty platform outside the window. It looked completely abandoned. No lights, no people, just a faint fog covering the ground like something was waiting there. My instincts screamed at me to get off, but something felt wrong. The silence inside the carriage was heavier than before, like even the air was watching me. The doors opened suddenly. A cold wave of air rushed inside. I could hear faint whispers coming from the fog outside, but I couldn't understand the words. The little girl stood up and walked closer to me. She whispered, "If you don't leave now, you'll never leave at all." Her voice felt heavier than a warning. I looked at the other passengers one last time. The teenage boy, the woman, and the man in the black coat were all staring at me now. Their eyes were completely dark. I couldn't move. All of them were now staring at me in complete silence. It felt like the carriage itself had turned into something alive, watching every breath I took. The tall man in the black coat slowly raised his head for the first time. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was no face, only a deep, endless darkness. The little girl stepped back and whispered, "He is the one who runs the train." Her words didn't make sense, but the fear in her voice was real. Suddenly, the train stopped completely. Not slowly, but instantly. Everything went silent. Even the sound of the engine disappeared as if it had never existed. Outside the window, the fog started moving in strange patterns. It looked like shapes, like people forming inside it, trying to reach the train. The fog outside started pressing against the glass like it wanted to break in. I could see vague faces forming inside it, all staring directly at me. The little girl grabbed my hand tightly and said, "Don't look outside anymore. It notices you when you look." Her voice was shaking for the first time. The faceless man stood up completely. Slowly, he turned toward me. The darkness where his face should have been started to move, like it was alive. The little girl whispered, "This train doesn't go to a station. It goes to a place where people who don't get off disappear forever." The last thing I remember is the doors opening again. A cold wind entered, and everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I was back at the station, but the guard was gone, and the train was waiting for me again.